stuck here. The cops won't bother me. You know, one of the problems with this bike, at least for me currently in my life, is that I'm not really commuting. And when I was commuting year-round and every single day, it made a lot of sense to have this particular bike. But if you're a guy that doesn't really ride as much, like I'm not really riding as much as I used to, even though I ride almost every day. I used to commute every single day, no matter what temperature and everything. This bike makes a really fantastic commuter, and you do pay a little bit of a premium because it is an expensive bike, but because of its really nice suspension and, you know, the big alternator, rectifier, whatever they call it, stator, you can power up your Gerbing electric clothing or whatever. This thing makes a really good commuter, and also riding it is very docile. It sounds good when you get on the gas, but right now if you listen to the engine, it doesn't sound good, because for some reason Yamaha made this engine very docile and low revving. Right now, look, oh, I ran over a little squirrel. He was dead already, so that's fine. Yamaha made this so docile until you start getting on it, then it sounds like a beast. So right now I'm going 2.2 thousand RPMs, and it's just idling, very low revving. But if I twist it up, if I add downshift, it sounds really good. Let me see, downshift. See? I'm not lying, it does sound good. It sounds like a V-twin. And I never thought I would hear a good sounding inline 2. Every single other bike that I've heard sounds like crap, and I thought that this bike sounded like crap because all of these motor vloggers, or motor journalists I should say, vloggers are actually a little bit more honest, they tell you that this bike is boring, it's all of these things, but I think a lot of it is fake news, because I think you have to live with this bike for a while to understand the beauty of it. And this is something you don't get from journalists, because they don't keep bikes long enough. You know, a journalist keeps a bike for a year and that's their long-term bike. But you can't really talk about it, because a lot of times with these journalists, if something breaks, then somebody else fixes. You don't really have any problems getting things fixed, and you just complain about it and you write your article. And that is the issue with the BMW type of journalists. The bike works, but living with a BMW is much different than living with this. A GS requires so much more maintenance, and it's so much more expensive to maintain. But the thing is, a lot of guys that get BMWs, they don't care. They don't care to pay for a premium for that. You know, they love that boxer engine. And on paper, the boxer engine does sound very good. And I've had two of them. They behave very strangely. They strangely in a good way. I do like how they ride. I like their suspension. I like a lot of things about them. What I don't like is the fact that owners usually gloss over the problems. It's kind of like when you have a kid that's a little bit kind of an asshole, and you as the parent only see good, but everybody else kind of sees that your kid is an asshole. That's what a BMW motorcycle is. You're basically riding an asshole, and only sometimes you see the good. I think a lot of owners, they love their bikes, and I understand that. And I've taken a lot of shit for talking about BMW, but I feel like BMW is that short story, The Emperor's New Clothes. The Emperor was naked, but everybody was afraid of saying that the Emperor was naked, and everybody just complimented that dweebosaurus because, you know, oh yeah, he's got new clothes, but you know, everybody knew that he was naked, but everybody had to pretend that he was wearing clothes. And then it took like a little kid to kind of point out the obvious. And the little kid just gets up and he points at the Emperor as he's walking around naked and goes, "The Emperor is naked." And that's what BMW motorcycles are, and cars, I should say. The Emperor is naked. And that is the issue with BMWs. You know, one of the things I like about this bike too, and it's usually true with bikes that have large engines, you can leave them in any gear and just ride almost like as if it's an automatic. You can't do that on a Ninja 250. On a Ninja 250 you have to be a very good rider to ride fast. You can be a lazy rider on the Super Tenere. Whenever I'm in one of these secondary roads like this, these are nice, but come on, Jesus, slowpoke. These are the roads I really like, because there's not going to be cops here. There's not going to be as many cars. And when you have an adventure bike, the one thing that you start to develop is a sense for finding roads that are a little bit rougher, that sport bike guys don't frequent. And for me, oh, look at that here. That's a hard body pickup truck. You know, that's the beauty of this bike. It's not because it's like super fast. You know, you don't get an adventure bike for being fast, but you get it because it soaks up the bumps for everyday riding. You know, you're going into these corners and you always have plenty of power, especially with 1200 cc's, to get you out. You can ride it in whatever gear you want. You know, it's got plenty of engine braking for stopping, and in the corners you can slow yourself down just with engine braking. They're tall that you can kind of look over the hills. You know, it's a lot less dangerous than a sport bike just by having a better riding position. And for aggressive riding, they're better, I think, because they're easier. So guys, that's the Super Tenere. I hope you enjoyed the ride. It was pretty fun riding around these back roads and just checking everything there is. But the bike looks fantastic. You know, for a bike that was bashed on magazines and journalists, it sure is a fantastic bike. And it feels just as light as my V-Strom 650. I mean, who ever thought that journalists were making things up, right? It's as if, like, we have this idea that journalists, for some reason, are supposed to be honest, but they're not. And I think the reason is because there's money involved in reviews. And if Yamaha doesn't pay to put journalists up in great hotels and pay to get their pedicures and manicures, then they might be inclined to give bad reviews. That's why you see a lot of BMWs being well reviewed, because BMW spares no expense at, you know, putting journalists up and paying them and bribing them with things. And of course, you don't want to bash BMW because they have quite a bit of power. So I think that's really the only reason this one did badly, is because Yamaha didn't spend as much money on marketing as BMW does. It's quite a shame, but that's the reason you can get this bike uber cheap, and you can't get the BMW uber cheap. That's the reason this one is a better buy. And for me, that's all that matters. It's a bike that's a good buy, and this one is. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.
I like it a lot.